a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and endless fields of maize, lived two children whose laughter often echoed across the trees. Zuwena and Musa. Best friends since their first breath, they had grown up side by side like twin blossoms on a single stem. Zuwena was a bright girl with a heart as vast as the open sky. Musa, curious and bold, was never seen without a slingshot tucked into the waist of his shorts. Their bond was something sacred, unspoken, and pure. They spent their days chasing butterflies, pretending to be warriors of old legends, and building forts from banana leaves. The world around them was simple, a place where mangoes fell from trees like blessings, and the river sang lullabies as it flowed lazily past their village. But like all things, childhood is fleeting. It began one year in December. The village's air was heavy with dry heat, the kind that made the earth crack and the leaves wilt. School had closed and the children were free, at least for a while. Zuwena and Musa wandered further than usual, chasing a story they had heard from an older boy. He spoke of a hidden grove where monkeys danced and a tree bore fruits sweeter than sugar. Their feet carried them to the edge of the village and into the unknown. There, beneath a canopy of twisted vines, the air changed. Time slowed, the world quieted. It was there that something shifted between them, not in words, not in touch, but in awareness. For the first time, they looked at each other with new eyes. They were no longer just playmates. The childlike simplicity of their bond took on the confusing layers of early adolescence. Questions neither of them could answer lingered between glances. Thoughts they didn't yet understand fluttered like trapped birds in their minds. They said nothing. They simply sat beneath that tree, picking at the strange fruit, laughing at old jokes, and letting the sun dip behind the hills. But when they walked back home, something was different. Musa walked closer than usual. Zuwena didn't pull away. That night, Zuwena lay on her mat and stared at the ceiling. Her chest was tight. She couldn't explain it, but something inside her felt heavier than before. Days passed. Their games grew quieter, more thoughtful. They sat for hours under trees, talking about what it meant to grow up. What love was, what marriage meant, what their parents never told them but they saw in glances, in silences, in whispered arguments behind closed doors. One afternoon, as rain threatened the sky, Musa brought a small red notebook. He had stolen it from his older brother, who had once attended boarding school. Inside were words about love, about bodies, about things neither of them had names for. He read it aloud, awkwardly, giggling between lines. Zuwena laughed too, but there was tension in her voice. When he looked up, she wasn't laughing anymore. "Musa," she said softly, "do you think we'll ever be like them?" "Like who?" "Like the people in your brother's book." Musa paused, then said, "I don't know. Maybe." That single word hung between them. Maybe. It wasn't long before curiosity overtook reason. One evening, in the same hidden grove, they let their confusion lead them astray. What began as innocent exploration spiraled into a decision they weren't ready for, driven not by desire but by questions, by silence, by absence of guidance. In the days that followed, the air between them grew thick with guilt and unease. Zuwena stopped laughing. Musa stared at the ground more often. Their parents noticed, but they chalked it up to adolescence. No one asked questions. No one noticed the storm brewing. Weeks later, Zuwena fell sick. The village nurse shook her head and sent her to the town clinic. It was there, in a sterile room with cracked walls, that the truth unfolded. Zuwena was pregnant. She was only 14. When her mother found out, the world shattered. Screams filled their tiny house. Musa's father dragged him from his room and demanded answers. The elders were summoned. Whispers spread like wildfire through the village. Everyone had an opinion, but no one asked why. Why two children had wandered down a road they didn't understand. Why no one had spoken to them about responsibility, about love, about self-worth. Why silence was more common than wisdom. Zuwena was taken away, sent to live with an aunt in the city. Musa was pulled from school and made to work in his father's fields. They were separated not just by distance, but by shame. But the story doesn't end there. Years passed. Zuwena, now a young mother, returned to the village with her son. She had completed vocational training in the city, learned tailoring, and had started saving to open a shop. She walked tall, her head held high, her shame turned into strength. Musa, now a quiet man with calloused hands, saw her at the well. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but in that moment there was understanding. They had both paid a price for mistakes they didn't know they were making. But they had grown, they had survived, and in some way they had become more than what their past tried to define them as. The village too had changed. A new head teacher had introduced weekly talks about puberty and personal responsibility. Mothers spoke more openly to daughters. Fathers, though still hesitant, began to include their sons in conversations that once felt taboo. Zuwena sometimes spoke at the school, not about what happened, but about choices, about the importance of asking questions, of waiting, of knowing yourself before letting the world define you. Musa volunteered to plant trees around the schoolyard. He never spoke during assemblies, but every child who passed him learned something from his silence. From the quiet way he worked, from the way he never looked away from his past, but used it as a compass for the future. And so, the story of Zuwena and Musa became more than a cautionary tale. It became a story of resilience, of broken innocence, yes, but also of healing, of redemption, of community learning from silence. Children still play beneath the mango trees, the river still hums its song, but now, when curiosity blooms and questions stir, there are answers, there are guiding hands, there are stories, stories like this one.